All right, and we back on the forecast. So in the Bronx, a 66-year-old mentally ill woman named Deborah Danner was shot in her own home by NYPD. So let's see what could cause a cop to shoot a 66-year-old mentally ill woman inside of her own home.
Mayor de Blasio said bluntly today, Deborah Danner should be alive. Here is what we know about Danner. She was 66 and she suffered from mental illness. We also know that police had been called to her home in similar situations several times in the past, and that they knew that she suffered from mental illness.
Now, we're also learning more about the sergeant who fired the shots, 30-year-old Hugh Barry. Barry has been with the NYPD for 8 years. Eyewitness News reporter Kimberly Richardson joining us live from the Castle Hill section with new details in this case. Kimberly.
Well, Dave, friends tell me they'd often find Deborah Danner standing right here at the bus stop. They admit she was troubled, but say she wasn't dangerous. Police Commissioner James O'Neill didn't hesitate, saying the bottom line is police here ended up taking a life instead of preserving one.
She didn't deserve to be dead.
Wallace Cook Jr. is talking about his cousin Deborah Danner, who since college wrestled with mental illness. Many here at her home on Pugsley Avenue knew the 66-year-old. She lived in a 7th-floor apartment, the same place where last night NYPD Sergeant Hugh Barry shot and killed her. Danner's sister lives in a neighboring building, was there when Danner was fatally wounded.
I was down the hall from my sister's apartment when I saw officers rush in and I heard 3 gunshots.
Police Commissioner James O'Neill did not mince words on the heels of this deadly shooting.
What is clear in this one instance, we failed. I want to know why it happened.
A neighbor called 911 just after 6 saying Danner was acting irrationally. Officials say Sergeant Barry saw the victim sitting on her bed holding scissors. He convinced her to drop them, but authorities maintain Danner then came at the officer with a baseball bat, took a swing at him. He fired 2 shots. Kirk has known Danner for years.
She had a bat. She take one swing, charge her, boom. Come on now. Taser, don't shoot her.
That very issue is now front and center in this case. Did the sergeant use proper protocol when dealing with an emotionally disturbed person?
So our policy is isolate and contain. So
What is isolate and contain?
if you have somebody in a certain area, time is on our side.
Danner was in her bedroom. The taser? Since last year, the department made it a point, retrained thousands of officers to use the non-lethal weapon. Sergeant Barry knew how to use a taser. Top brass want to know why he didn't. But a spokesperson for the Sergeants Benevolent Association says Officer Barry feared for his life as Danner grabbed that bat from behind her bed, ignored repeated orders to drop it, charged, then swung at the sergeant's head. But relatives point out police had been here before, knew Danner, that she was schizophrenic. Mayor de Blasio says point blank, Danner should be alive right now.
We did fail, and we need to say it out loud, and the people deserve to hear it.
Now, Sergeant Barry has again been with the department for 8 years. Tonight, he has been placed on modified leave, stripped of his badge and gun. Now, coming up later on Eyewitness News, what one expert has to say about Sergeant Barry's use of deadly force.
So the police were called to her apartment by a neighbor, and she was mentally ill. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and the police, who have a history of coming to her apartment, already knew. And of course, there's supposed to be certain protocols when it comes to mentally ill situations. Now, the NYPD say when they got there, she had a pair of scissors in her hand. Now, as one of the cops were talking to her, Officer Hugh Barry came in and interfered, and she ran into her bedroom. Now, Officer Hugh Barry says he was able to talk her into putting the scissors down, but as he started to approach her, she grabbed a bat. That's when Officer Hugh Barry says he felt threatened for his life and was forced to shoot her twice, killing her. Now, in this particular case, the police chief James O'Neill and the mayor Bill de Blasio immediately came out and condemned the police actions, saying that the NYPD failed. And even though he was claiming self-defense, he was still charged with second-degree murder.
An NYPD sergeant charged with murdering a Bronx woman, the deadly shooting, and the war over words in the investigation. Good evening, I'm Dana Tyler. The sergeant says he acted in self-defense when he killed the woman, but prosecutors say he broke the law. CBS 2's Alice Gaynor, live outside the court in the concourse section of the Bronx. Alice?
Dana, a special grand jury indicted Sergeant Hugh Barry after a more than 2-month investigation. The DA argues that Barry did not follow procedure, but Barry's supporters say he was simply protecting himself against a mentally ill, unpredictable person.
We have defendant Hugh Barry hereby plead not guilty as to all counts.
31-year-old NYPD Sergeant Hugh Barry stood stoically in the courtroom as the charges against him were read. Second-degree murder, first- and second-degree manslaughter, and criminally negligent homicide in the fatal shooting of 66-year-old Deborah Danner in her Bronx apartment. Back in October, Barry and other officers responded to a call of an emotionally disturbed person screaming in a hallway. Danner allegedly refused to be evaluated at a hospital. At one point, clutched a pair of scissors, then grabbed a bat. Barry shot Danner 2 times after she allegedly came at him with that bat.
On that day, Sergeant Barry failed to seek critical background information about Ms. Danner's condition or behavior. Sergeant Barry disregarded his training from the New York City Police Department in dealing with emotionally disturbed persons by rushing into Ms. Danner's apartment.
In court, the prosecutor said Barry wasn't following procedure. The grand jury's report said that Barry did not use other options before using deadly force. Namely, the question has been raised, why didn't he use a taser? The president of the Sergeants Benevolent Association, Ed Mullins, defends Barry.
It's called a patrol guide. It's some rules to follow and procedures to try to follow, but it's a guide. It's not a law. And according to law, Sergeant Barry acted according to law.
Within hours of the fatal shooting last fall, the mayor and police commissioner spoke out against the deadly use of force.
Tragic, and it is unacceptable.
We failed.
Mullins says those comments tainted the grand jury pool.
For Commissioner O'Neill to make the comments he made are disgraceful.
Danner's family was not in the courtroom today, but some supporters were there.
So right now, I'm just happy for the small piece of justice.
Barry was released on bail. He'll be back in court on July 7th. If convicted, he faces life in prison.
So despite the police union and all the police representatives getting pissed at the comments the mayor and the police chief made, these police unions are justifying the murder of this 66-year-old mentally ill woman. They claim that this bat-wielding elderly woman caused the police to fear for their life enough to justify her shooting. They even came to his aid with the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund. They have a fund set up so people can donate to help cops pay for their legal funds for when they murder somebody. There's no reason why we can't set up an organization where we can donate to help build our economy. But these police unions even hired a biomedical engineer to conduct a $22,000 study, where he asked 3 women about the same size as Deborah to hit a crash test dummy to prove that a bat could cause damage. Now, mind you, he didn't get a 66-year-old woman to swing a bat, but that study was supposed to prove that her having a bat could have fractured his skull, and he had no other choice but to shoot her twice. The problem is, another cop who was an eyewitness, Officer Camilo Rosario, said this woman did not swing a bat. He even testified against him, saying that is not what happened at all.
Sergeant now on trial for the murder of 66-year-old emotionally disturbed woman. Sergeant Hugh Barry says that he was threatened, but prosecutors say he didn't follow protocol when he shot Deborah Danner in her Bronx apartment. CBS 2's Aaron Logan is live now outside the courthouse in the concourse section with more details. Aaron?
Christine, a lot of eyes on this case. When Deborah Danner was first shot and killed, there was a debate over how well officers are trained when dealing with emotionally disturbed people. That question at the forefront today as the trial got underway. A very stoic 32-year-old NYPD Sergeant Hugh Barry sat aside his attorney in court who was anything but.
223-pound person swings that at your head. It's gonna crush your skull.
Defense attorney Andrew Quinn claims Sergeant Barry acted in self-defense when he shot and killed then 66-year-old Deborah Danner, who suffered from schizophrenia. 4 officers and 2 EMTs first responded to a 911 call of an emotionally disturbed person screaming in the hallway of her Bronx apartment in October 2016. After repeated attempts to get Danner to the hospital, she was uncooperative and refused medical attention. Shortly after, Sergeant Barry and another officer arrived to the Castle Hill apartment building. They happened to take the elevator with Danner's older sister, Jennifer, her legal guardian. When called to the witness stand, she told the judge she asked the officers to please not break the door down. She had to pay for repairs twice in the past when police couldn't get her sister to let them in.
Sergeant Barry did not ask a single question of Jennifer Danner. Didn't ask about Deborah's history. Didn't ask whether Jennifer could help.
Once at the apartment, Sergeant Barry was able to get Danner to put down a pair of scissors she was armed with. She then picked up a baseball bat and refused to put it down.
Hugh Barry had 8/10 of a second to make a decision and suffer whatever consequences may come, including possibility, very real possibility of death.
Sergeant Barry's presence on scene was supposed to provide calm, experience, and knowledge.
It's a case both Mayor Bill de Blasio and Police Commissioner James O'Neill have expressed major concern over.
It should never have happened. The NYPD's job is to protect life.
We failed.
Still, a showing of support for Barry in court. Fellow officers and union representatives, some with hats saying, "We are Barry."
We are happy that we are finally getting our day in court and that the truth will come out.
Friends of Deborah Danner's church groups are also speaking out in hopes that police receive additional training in these cases.
People like her living with mental illness are presenting to the city a new challenge and one we believe we can honor to protect them.
Now, the trial is set to resume Thursday at 9:30 a.m. A judge will decide the outcome of this trial, not a jury.
Now, even though this trial is still going on right now, this cop who was fired the same day that he shot this woman, despite him violating policies, despite police officers testifying against him, the police union and all of his affiliates and fellow officers are still out there supporting this cop. They even have hats on that say, "We are Barry."
A New York cop's murder trial now underway for the deadly shooting of an emotionally disturbed woman who attacked him with a bat. Good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock. I'm Bill Renner.
And I'm Liz Cho. NYPD officers showed up in force in court today to show their support for a sergeant on trial for murder.
He is Sergeant Hugh Barry, accused of killing Deborah Danner, an emotionally disturbed woman who came at him with a baseball bat.
Well, now a judge has to decide whether it was self-defense or murder. Now, it is News reporter Darla Miles is live in the Melrose section of the Bronx Beat story tonight. Darla.
Well, Liz, we learned in court today that Deborah Danner's sister and Sergeant Hugh Barry actually showed up on the scene at the same time. In fact, they rode the same elevator up to the 7th floor and both had the intention of helping Deborah Danner. An argument over a Social Security check with her younger sister may have been what triggered 66-year-old Deborah Danner to become loud and unruly back in October 2016. The reason neighbors called 911 for help that day, the day she was shot by Sergeant Hugh Barry, who is now on trial for second-degree murder and manslaughter.
Some would have you believe that a bat by itself automatically is deadly physical force. We do not agree with that.
But defense attorneys for Sergeant Barry do, and say it's justification for the use of force. On the first day of testimony, Danner's sister Jennifer was asked about the bat the 66-year-old paranoid schizophrenic was known to keep in her 7th floor Castle Hill apartment. Defense attorneys asked, "Did you notice a bat in that apartment?" She answered yes. "Do you know why she had that bat?" "No, I was wondering why she had that bat." Investigators say Danner picked up the bat after she was ordered to drop a pair of scissors. "So when you heard she had scissors, you were alarmed, right?" "Yes, I was very concerned." "Were you concerned for the officers?" "No, I was concerned for my sister."
She was 4 feet away from him, threatening him with a deadly weapon.
Support for Sergeant Barry by fellow officers was unmistakable and equally matched by clergy in support of the mentally ill and civil rights activists who were also in court Tuesday.
Hugh Barry is symbolic of the lack of accountability in the NYPD.
Too many people have been killed in this city
who are emotionally disturbed since the death of Deborah Danner.
It's a tragedy on so many levels. She wasn't a criminal, she was sick.
And there were so many supporters in court today on both sides, they had to open up a second courtroom for those people to view the trial. The trial resumed, in fact, on Thursday morning.
Now, this cop officer, Hugh Barry, knows that a lot of the evidence is against him. You have fellow officers testifying against him. So instead of having a jury trial, he elected to have a bench trial with just a judge and no jury. Now we see how quick they are to get out and defend each other, to protect each other, even if it means justifying the shooting of a mentally ill woman. We can never depend on them to punish themselves. Why would they send themselves to prison? They realize if one of the cops get punished, then they all could potentially get punished. But for some reason, if something happens to one of us, we think, well, that can't happen to me until it does. We are Deborah Danner, just like with the murder of Charleena Lyles. She was a mentally ill woman who the police had a history with and knew about, who called the police for help, and they showed up to her apartment and they murdered her. Recently, Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best found that Officer Jason Anderson in fact broke policy because he didn't even have a taser with him. A mentally ill woman is shot to death and your punishment is 2 days suspension. Now, they made sure to say that it didn't determine the outcome of whether she would have still been shot or not, so no one could even think about bringing up criminal charges. Even when they do admit to doing something wrong, they still will not say that it's criminally wrong. They tell you it's a tragedy, but it's nothing we can really do about it. And until we do something about it, then it's going to continue happening. They have no problem hurting our children, hurting our elderly, hurting our women. And they will support each other and defend each other to justify it. So until we start responding with that urgency and put aside our tribalism to do the things that we actually agree on, like protecting our children, protecting our elderly, building an economic base so that we can protect ourselves, then this same cycle will continue to happen. And we'll still be marching another 50 or 100 years from now.
Tonight in the deadly police shooting of a mentally ill woman in the Bronx, the police commissioner taking more criticism as he insists the NYPD failed. CBS 2 political reporter Marsha Kramer has more.
Police Commissioner James O'Neill is refusing to back down in his assessment of what cost the life of Deborah Danner, a 66-year-old emotionally disturbed Bronx woman. Right after she died, he said the NYPD failed, that proper procedures weren't followed. And now, 48 hours later, he's sticking to his guns.
As I said before, we were called to that apartment to help someone, and we ended up killing her. To me, that's an agency failure, and every police officer knows when they use deadly physical force that they're accountable for that.
The commissioner's words drawing a strong response from the union.
I'm not surprised. He is a newly appointed commissioner. He's working for a mayor who has an anti-police perspective of the world. What I am surprised at is how quickly the mayor neutered this commissioner in less than a month. Everything has just changed from this cop's cop that he was known as to now being the neutered little puppy of the mayor.
An unusual ally emerging in this tug of war. Civil rights attorney Norman Siegel, who normally finds himself filing suits against cops or seeking police reforms, is taking issue with the decision to immediately pull the cop's gun and badge. You can't hang someone and then have a trial, he said. Cops have civil rights too. Mayor de Blasio was asked about it today on his radio show.
The public had a right to know that this shouldn't have happened, and it was the right thing to do.
Commissioner O'Neill again raising questions about why the sergeant didn't use a non-lethal weapon to stop Danner, his taser. He said the NYPD now has over 1,700 tasers, 12 for each precinct.
At Middle School 118 in East Tremont, the Bronx, a notice about Black History Month is the first thing you see inside the door. But this year's commemoration is marred by controversy.
Take your feet and step on a kid's back. That's a sign of disrespect racism and everything else.
The controversy first reported in the New York Daily News. Students claim 7th grade social studies teacher Tricia Cummings told several black children to lie on the floor during a lesson about the slave trade and the cruel conditions aboard slave ships. When one girl laughed uncomfortably, Cummings allegedly stepped on her back, saying, "See how it feels to be a slave."
I'm all for students learning, but there should be boundaries, and there's certain things that just shouldn't be done.
She should be reprimanded, not let go, because I heard she was a great teacher. But when you do wrong things, it always backfires, so she should have thought about it before she did it.
Chancellor Farina told me Cummings has been temporarily reassigned away from students.
I don't want to make any suppositions. It's under investigation. It's a very serious allegation, and she was removed, and I think at this point we have to wait for the investigation.
Several students who had the teacher told me they liked her very much.
She was a great teacher. I was surprised when they told me this happened, but I don't actually believe she'll do something like that.
Students went home Friday with this letter from the principal, who promises to work with teachers on best practices for covering sensitive material such as slavery. In East Tremont, Tony Aiello, CBS 2 News.
And we emailed the teacher for comment, but she has yet to respond. On her website, meantime, she says her goal is to create a caring, safe, and fair-minded classroom environment.
A student at James Island Charter High School speaking out about a Snapchat photo that school officials say, quote, whether intentional or not, it offended many people.
And Snapchat, as you may or may not know, is a popular social media app used to share photos and videos with followers. Popular because the images disappear after a while, but sometimes that's just long enough for others to see those images and share.
Our Alexis Simmons joins us now live in the control room. You've been working on this story all day long. You talked with a student about that photo. What did he have to say?
Yeah, Lisa and Raphael, a senior at James Island Charter High School, Rick Wilson, tells us it's not the picture itself, but the caption with the picture that offended a lot of people at the school. Now, this photo shows two students wearing spa face masks. Now, one mask is white, the other mask is brown. The caption on the original photo says, "Happy MLK weekend." Now, James Island Charter High School administration made a statement saying, in part, the post does not reflect the values and beliefs of the school. It also says the school has addressed the students involved and is now a discipline issue. Now, Rick Wilson also shared the Snapchat photo on social media with the caption, "It's crazy how racism still goes around in 2018. Share and make this viral."
It was going around a lot, and I saw it, and I was like, well, at first when I saw it, I was like, well, he just got face masks, until I clicked it, and I looked and I saw it, and it was like, "Happy Martin Luther King weekend." I was like, well, that has to have a hidden meaning behind it.
And the girls issued an apology on their school's new show that was posted on YouTube. Now, one girl says they were having a spa night at home and there were no conscious thoughts to make a reference to MLK Day. The other student said in part that she made a dumb decision and that she is so disappointed in herself. They go on to say that they don't stand for anything of that nature. And I spoke with the mother of one of the girls in the photo over the phone tonight. She told me she filed a police report for cyberbullying against the student for posting the Snapchat photo on Facebook. Now, Rick says he wants the photo to be taken seriously by school officials.
We're going to start here with the angry reaction this morning after the latest twist in the case of former NFL player Joe McKnight. We want you to look at this flood of tweets from people in the pro football community. McKnight was shot and killed in an apparent road rage incident in Louisiana. And the next day, the police decided to release the shooter. They have not charged him. We're now learning that the same man was involved in yet another road rage incident in the same location. ABC's Eva Pilgrim is in Gretna, Louisiana for us this morning. Hi, Eva.
Good morning. 10 years ago, according to court documents, Ronald Glasser was accused of beating up a man at this gas station in an apparent road rage incident. Then this week, at this stoplight, he admits to shooting a man.
This morning, new details about the man who police say admits to shooting a former NFL running back during what authorities are calling a road rage incident.
We definitely need answers.
Why was he released?
They have usurped and corrupted the criminal justice system.
Investigators say Ronald Gasser, seen here in cuffs, shot 28-year-old Joe McKnight 3 times. The Jefferson Parish coroner telling ABC News the former USC standout who played for the Jets was hit in the hand, shoulder, and chest.
Mr. Gasser admitted to shooting Joe McKnight Jr.
McKnight's family and supporters in the community outraged his killer was released from custody and has not been charged.
I want answers. I want the truth to come out. It's not a white or black thing, it's a right or wrong thing.
According to records released by the Sheriff's Department overnight, Gasser was arrested for a violent fight during a road rage incident in 2006 at a gas station at the same intersection where he allegedly shot and killed McKnight. Charges from the 2006 incident were later dropped. On Thursday, investigators say witnesses reported seeing the two men arguing. The sheriff telling ABC News McKnight was not armed when Gasser fired those shots from his car.
Mr. Gasser did not stand over Mr. McKnight and fire shots into him.
Still, the sheriff says charging Gasser before a thorough investigation is completed would be a rush to judgment. McKnight's family overcome with emotion.
It was like I lost a friend, I lost my everything.
The sheriff saying this case is very personal for his department. The man who raised McKnight was a sheriff's deputy.
This Kansas state lawmaker was in this town meeting arguing about whether or not to legalize marijuana, okay? And one of his reasons for being against the legalization was this. Listen carefully, the tape's not great.
What you really need to do is go back in the 30s and where they outlawed all type of drugs in Kansas across the United States. What was the reason why they did that? One of the reasons why, I hate to say it, it's the African Americans. They were basically users, and they basically responded the worst of those drugs just because their character makeup, their genetics.
That is Republican State Representative Steve Alford in a public meeting. And yes, he just said African Americans had the worst response to marijuana as a function of their character and makeup. He then issued a statement saying he was wrong, and sincerely apologized to anyone he hurt. Why do we play this? Because racism and ignorant thoughts about race don't always exist in the loudness of the KKK or people carrying banners and saying things that are obnoxious and voluble. It's often quiet moments and people who believe things that feed a very corrosive sense of fairness and of humanity. That's what this is. I'm not saying that this is a bad guy. I'm saying that he believed this to be true.
Clearly.
And it is poppycock.